Hello, this is Pauline Jennings. Welcome to Musician Talk. Interviews with people you know, people you've heard, and people you've heard about. A collection of candid, casual, and lively conversations with local area musicians about how music matters in their lives, our community, and beyond. You'll hear discussions with up-and-comers and those that have been performing for years. So glad to have you with me. Since the 1980s, Jon Manners has been a fixture in the Northfield music scene. It's just his guitar and him on stage and a very percussive foot, but he manages to completely fill a room. And it's clear to see by his beaming smile that he loves to play, sing, and tell musical stories. Jon is a first-rate singer-songwriter, but don't pigeonhole him into that genre. His music has a sometimes rock, sometimes blues feel, along with folk influence. All this to say, his music is one of a kind, 100% unique, which also describes his colorful and bold lyrics. If you talk to Jon about his talent, well, he'll shrug it off. He's a humble and kind man. And now it's time to find out more. Let's talk with Jon Manners. Jon, welcome to Musician Talk, and I want to know how you're doing in this time of isolation.
I'm doing just fine. It's like being retired, which I actually just became. I don't think it's going to change much for me. Yeah.
Not a lot of differences. So I want to take you back to when you first started playing and how that felt and, how it affected your life.
Well, I started playing very early. My parents gave me guitar lessons for my 8th birthday, and it's just been with me ever since.
And so when you picked up that guitar, was it awkward? Did it feel right? Was it hard to practice? Or if it starts out kind of just easy and natural?
Well, I think it was really very frustrating in the beginning.
Yeah.
The guitar that I started out on was a Stella. It was a real cheap instrument that the music teacher, loaned me as I took lessons. And I used that for the first year, and I like to think of it like it had really high action, and the strings felt like they were rusty.
Oh no!
And I was just a kid, and it was, I remember crying about it. And at one point, my parents said, this is too hard. Maybe you don't have to continue with this. And I think that they were using kind of some reverse psychology on me there, which absolutely worked. Because I did not want to. I did not want to quit.
That's interesting because my next question was going to be, why didn't you quit? But I guess it's because of psychology. That's great.
Well, I was with the guitar for the first year, and then, or almost the first year. At Christmas time, I got a really nice Guild F-hole guitar, which I had for a long time.
How did that change things for you with the ease of playing?
It made it easier on my fingers, I guess.
Well, that's true. I would think after a year on a not so good guitar, your fingers would be pretty calloused up.
Calloused, yes. They probably were.
Exactly. So do you remember the transition of it being frustrating and a chore to becoming something you wanted to do?
Well, I started out, my guitar teacher had me in the Mel Bay system, which is a system of, I think there are 6 or 7 books that you work through. And it was in that first book, when we got to Volga Boatman, that I really clicked with that song. And I put my own spin on it. And so I was just doing my own creative little thing there. And that, from then on, it really was much better.
So your ability to improvise is what really maybe charged the musical engine in your brain to kick in.
That's funny. I've always thought that I didn't really learn to improvise until I got to be in junior high school when I was in my first band, because at that point you've got to start playing without music in front of you. And I felt like at that point I had to start all over again, because you have to take one note and put it with another note and figure out what notes go with it. It's not like you're reading anymore. And so it was really a step back. I'd been playing for quite a while at that point already. By the time I was 12 or 15, I'd been playing for 4 or 5 years. And I thought I was pretty good until I had to start to improvise.
That's so interesting. So you didn't have the chords in front of you necessarily even, or are you talking about between the chords or soloing kind of things?
Oh, soloing, yeah.
Okay, got it.
I feel like it's something that should be taught all along. When you're starting to play an instrument, right away you should be figuring out what notes go together and how to do that. But generally, that doesn't happen. You don't get that when you take lessons.
To start having your brain think that way would be a big help, I think, too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But now we found out that actually you were improvising the first year that you were playing. If you were adding
Right,
to that
involved
song,
Yeah, well, I still did have music in front of me, and it was
sure,
more like I was doing an interpretation. I was adding a little syncopation or something.
got it. Well, I call that improv. So what I like to focus on in this interview and musician talk is not so much necessarily your musical journey as it relates to where you played, who you played with, but more about what it did to you as a human being and what you
Mhm.
think the influence on your life and your relationships has been from playing.
Well, I've been doing it for so long. I get different things out of it depending on what I'm doing. If
Sure.
I'm practicing, if I'm just practicing, it's really like a meditation for me.
Hmm.
I get very relaxed when I'm done. I can just practice and practice, and I just get it's relaxing. When I'm recording, I just get lost in it. I can be down in my studio working on a number, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I'll just do one or two more takes on this. And then, I'll be up in 10 minutes for dinner, and then an hour and a half goes by, and I'm in trouble. And it just goes by. I just get lost in it. And then if I'm performing, that's kind of an energizing thing.
Hmm.
So I mean, I get different results depending on what I'm doing with
That's lovely. I love that. So it relaxes you when you practice, which is absolutely the opposite of what it did the first year that you were taking lessons.
it. That made me cry.
Exactly.
It's been good for me too, because I'm not an outgoing guy. I'm kind of introspective, and
Okay.
so to get out there and perform, I've been told it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing that I've got going.
So are you saying that on stage you're outgoing?
I'm out, yeah, on stage I'm outgoing. No, you won't hear me talk much between songs. I don't do the stage pattern thing,
Sure.
but I do feel a release. It's good for me to do.
I love that word release. In so many ways, release is good for our bodies, no
Hmm.
matter if it's emotional or intellectual, physical, release is good. I think that when you see Jon Manners on stage, it's very evident that it's a joy place for you.
I'm comfortable. Yeah.
So, throughout your life, I'm wondering how it has affected your relationships throughout your life with friends and family.
Well, most of my friends have been musicians.
Hmm.
I've always felt that I'm a person that doesn't really have all that many friends, but the ones I do have been players.
Isn't that a gift? That if you're the kind of person who doesn't necessarily make friends easily, or you're shy, or you're not outgoing, um, music and sharing music can be a gift in that way, that it can bring you friends and create a circle of
Really,
friends.
that's true. People think they know you once they've seen you play. Um, so I mean, that's kind of an interesting part of it.
Right. Well, why don't you expand on that a little bit? So there's the difference between the circle of friends you have that are musicians who probably do understand you a lot more than well, for sure understand you better than an audience member does.
Well, actually, they probably do know me. I think that the interesting part is that I don't know them, but they know
Ah,
me, um,
yes.
because they have seen a slice of me that I've revealed.
I think that when I listen to your songs and I hear your lyrics, they are very personal, a lot of them. And so you're right. Just listening to your songs, I get a feel for you. So John, you sent me a couple songs, and I listened to "Tearing It Down," and I'd love to hear that song now and share it with the audience. But I'd like you to tell us a little bit about it and why you chose it as one of the songs you wanted to have on this interview.
Okay, tearing it down is about the house that my father built.
Okay.
And it was back in 1950 that he and his brother Bill bought property in Connecticut. They'd been living in New York City. And they would go to the property in Norwalk, Connecticut on the weekends, and they would start building this house. They'd never built a house before. They had to use shovels to dig the foundation. They did not have any power tools. They would use a handsaw to cut the 2x4s. And he learned a lot. And he learned so much that he went on to write for Family Handyman. And he eventually catapulted that into being the building editor for House Beautiful magazine.
Oh, wow.
And while he was there, our house, which he had built, was featured in one of the issues. As he grew older, into his 90s, the house fell into disrepair. Things were just really, it was a losing battle. And by the time he died, it was a complete disaster. And my brothers and I got together and we decided that it had to be torn down. And so it was a real sad thing. And I wrote this song about it.
I thought it was a metaphor. It's so interesting to find out it's not. I thought you were talking about the tearing down of relationships, but I love the fact that this is a true story. So let's listen to it now.
Tearing it down where I grew up, the house that you built, the house that I love. Tearing it down while I tear up, leaving a hole there's no filling up. Soon my memory will be all that remains. I will carry you forever. Though I'm leaving scattered ashes in the winter, some large part of me remains. Tearing it down, how can this be? I got to give thanks that you can't see. Tearing it down, haul it away. I can't believe things turn out this way. I just can't face this now. I can't face this now. But I will remember in my heart, I will always remember 237 forever. Tearing it down where I grew up, the house that
Well, it was a whole different listen now that I knew that the song was about a real story in your life. That's, it's very touching.
Oh,
Very
thank you.
touching. So I want to go back a little bit to when I asked you to send me your bio. You sent me this information about, I think it was early in your musical career, that you have these couple breaks that didn't materialize.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you want to fill the audience in on that a little bit, and then talk to me about disappointment in music and how that translates into your music, or if it did.
Well, sure. Back in the early 70s, I guess it must have been about 1972, I ran around a while with Andrew Loog Oldham, who was the producer of the Rolling Stones. We went into the studio together and recorded for the Rare Earth label, a subsidiary of Motown. And it didn't work out. It was a very exciting time. And I kind of liken it to these days, if you were on The Voice or American Idol and got sent home. That's kind of what happened. It wasn't all my fault either. You know, when I look back at it, my lyrics weren't all that great at that point yet. But there was also, he had issues. He was drinking and smoking a lot. The whole thing was kind of, it was a wild ride. It was, it was very disappointing, of course. But sometimes I think that if I'd succeeded back then, I wouldn't still be playing now.
Interesting. What kept going through my head, a victim of life circumstances, that song. But that's an interesting thing to say, that you don't think you'd still be playing if you had taken that trajectory.
I don't really know, of course,
right,
but
of course.
I think, with that success, if I'd had it, there would have been a lot of compromises that would have that I would have had to have made.
Sure.
And as it turned out, I never had to really make any compromises. I've always just done what I wanted to do. And these days with the recording gear that everybody can afford, there's just no stopping me.
That's great. And with that attitude, let's go into this next song that has a lot of attitude. Tell me about Poor Rich.
There was a point where I decided I needed to get more into my lyrics. And this happened after I started reading Carl Hyacin and Elmore Leonard, who are two of my favorite, pulp fiction kind of writers. And the way they write, they take a few characters, they make up a few characters, and they put them in a room together and see what they do to each other, not really knowing exactly where it's going to go. So that's what I did with this song. I got. Well, I'm going to have these characters. And I'm going to put them in a bar sitting next to each other and see what they do to each other. And, the song is it's 3 minutes or a little bit more than 3 minutes maybe. And it's something to be able to tell a whole story, a whole scene in that amount of time and have it feel natural. And I feel like I succeeded on this one.
You did. You did, so much so that I was living it a little bit. I mean, you really brought me in. And what a gift to be able to do that.
You take just one more step, I'm gonna knock you down. Jack spat those words of riches, his stool spun around. His friend's hand had traveled up the thigh of Laura Lee. Showed Jack was drunk, but not so drunk he couldn't see. Richie leered on Jack, he saw was red. He saw the two of them in bed. A fist clenched tight, it shot out. Richie fell, Jack's girl, she screamed out. It made an awful sound, Rick's head when it went crack. Now he's laying very still. Is his time up? Is he not coming back? No way Rich could have helped himself, her booty was too near. A tiny voice cried no, a tiny voice he could not hear. Nothing really Rich could do, that girl, she's so fine. You try try to sit next to Laura Lee and not go out of your mind. Laura said, my God, Jack, what have you done? I swear to God, Jack, you are the only one. That straying hand, Jack, I thought was yours. Tears streamed down her face into the blood upon the floor. Jack he saw was red. He saw the two of them in bed. A fist clenched tight, it shot out. Richie fell at Jack's girl, she screamed out. It made an awful sound, the floor in poor Rick's head. The question really now, poor Rich, is he dead? They'd been the best of friends until that fateful hour. That move on Laura Lee turned their friendship sour. Poor Rich had had enough, and now near a whole year he wasn't thinking good. He'd had way too much beer. Laura said, my God, Jack, what have you done? I swear to God, Jack, you are the only one. That straying hand, Jack, I thought was yours. Tears streamed down her face unto the blood upon the floor.